It started with the sound. At first, I thought it was just another early morning landscaping job, the kind that wakes you up before your alarm, when the neighborhood's still wrapped in that half-sleep haze. But this sound wasn't the familiar whine of lawnmowers or leaf blowers. No, this was heavier. A deep, rhythmic thunk-thunk-thunk that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. I stumbled out to my porch, coffee mug in hand, and froze. There were men in fluorescent vests surrounding my property line, 4 of them, working methodically with shovels and a small excavator. A wide trench was forming around my fence, circling my entire acre like some medieval moat. For a moment, I genuinely thought it was a mistake. Maybe the city was doing some underground maintenance. Maybe they'd mixed up the address. Then I saw her. Ellen Davenport, president of the Maple Hollow Homeowners Association, and the single most self-appointed, self-righteous tyrant in our suburban corner of Oregon. She stood there in her usual power stance, hands on her hips, clipboard in hand, a wide-brimmed hat shading her carefully permed hair. She looked like a general surveying her troops. I walked straight to the fence line. "Ellen," I called out. "Mind telling me why there's a construction project around my yard?" She turned slowly, giving that tight-lipped smile that never reached her eyes. "Oh, Mr. Carter. Morning. We're just doing some community drainage improvements. We had complaints about your runoff during last winter's rains." "Runoff?" I laughed. "My property sits higher than the road, Ellen. Water runs away from me." She tapped her clipboard. "Not according to our survey. It's an HOA matter. Nothing for you to worry about." I took a long sip of coffee, eyes locked on hers. "And did the HOA vote on this?" She hesitated. Just a flicker, but I caught it. This was an executive decision. "We're protecting the neighborhood's integrity." I wanted to say more, to tell her this was trespassing, that she had no legal right to touch my land, but something in her smug expression stopped me. She wanted me to explode. She wanted me to lose my cool so she could slap me with some behavioral fine. So instead, I smiled. "Well, Ellen," I said calmly, "you'll forgive me if I keep my own records of your little integrity project." She squinted. "What's that supposed to mean?" I pointed at my porch. The red light of my security cameras blinked steadily, 3 of them, angled just right. One caught the front fence, another the side, and a wide angle covered the backyard. Ellen followed my gaze, her face tightening just enough to betray discomfort. Then she turned away. "Carry on, gentlemen," she barked. The sound of shovels resumed. By noon, the trench encircled my entire property, 3 feet wide, 2 feet deep. My fence posts were now standing like thin soldiers over a pit. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd moved to Maple Hollow for peace and privacy, and now I was literally surrounded by a moat. That evening, when the crew finally left, I grabbed a flashlight and inspected the damage. They'd dug a full 6 inches onto my land. I measured it myself with a tape line and stakes. I felt anger bubbling up, not the quick kind, but the cold kind. The kind that lingers. Inside, my wife, Marianne, looked up from her laptop. "They're gone?" "For now." She frowned. "You called the cops?" "Not yet." I looked at the monitor feed from my cameras. "I've got something better." On the footage, time-stamped and crystal clear, Ellen was there the entire time. Directing. Ordering. Waving her clipboard like a wand of authority. Marianne walked over and stared at the screen. "She's going to regret that." "Exactly." I leaned back in my chair, already planning. But not yet. Let her dig herself deeper. The next morning, I woke up to another noise, this time, a truck backing up. Beep beep beep. Outside, a dump truck was unloading gravel into the trench. Ellen was there again, chatting with one of the workers like she owned the place. I opened the window. "Ellen. You'd better stop before that gravel hits my fence." She looked up and smiled sweetly. "Oh, Mr. Carter, it's all under control. We're reinforcing the drainage perimeter." I felt my pulse rising. "You're dumping gravel on my property." She just waved, ignoring me completely. That was the moment I decided enough was enough. That night, I made copies of all the footage. Every second of it, from multiple angles. Ellen's face, her voice, her orders. I even had audio of her saying, "This is HOA business, no need for permission." I uploaded one copy to the cloud, one to a USB drive, and one to an old hard drive locked in my safe. Marianne raised an eyebrow. "Paranoid much?" "Maybe," I said. "But when the storm hits, I'll be dry." She smirked. "You always did like your metaphors." 3 days later, a notice appeared on my door. Violation, unapproved modifications to HOA drainage system. Immediate remediation required. Fine, $2,000. I stared at it, speechless, and then laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. They had dug around my land, and now they were fining me for interfering. That was when I knew this wasn't incompetence. It was malice. Ellen had always hated that my property sat slightly outside her perfect symmetry, the only one with a taller fence, a workshop in the back, and solar panels she called an eyesore. But this time, she'd gone too far. As the sun set, I looked at the trench, at the gravel glittering in the light, and at the red glow of my cameras. I smiled. "All right, Ellen," I murmured. "Let's see how deep this trench really goes." By Monday morning, the trench had become the neighborhood's favorite rumor. From my kitchen window, I could see neighbors slowing their morning jogs to stare, whispering over their shoulders as if my property had suddenly turned radioactive. Someone even took a selfie near the gravel pit, posting it to the Maple Hollow Facebook page with the caption, "Drainage issues being fixed. Thanks, HOA Red Heart." I nearly spat out my coffee. Fixed? My land looked like a war zone. At 9:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. Caller ID, Maple Hollow HOA office. I let it ring twice before answering. "This is Carter." "Mr. Carter," came Ellen Davenport's honeyed tone, "I'm calling to inform you that your fine is due by end of week. The board voted unanimously last night." I could hear papers shuffling in the background, that fake bureaucratic rustle people use to sound important. I took a slow breath. "Ellen, you and your little board illegally trespassed and damaged private property. You have no legal authority to excavate my yard." There was a pause. Then, that condescending laugh of hers. "Oh, Mr. Carter. You really should review your covenant agreement before throwing around legal terms. The HOA is well within its rights to enforce environmental compliance." "Really?" I said calmly. "Even when it involves trespassing with heavy equipment?" "Community improvement projects are exempt," she snapped, tone sharpening. "I see. Well, Ellen, I'll be submitting a formal counterclaim by this afternoon." "Counterclaim?" "Yeah," I said, letting a grin spread across my face. "Against you personally. And the HOA board. With video evidence. You might want to hold onto that clipboard, because this one's going to shake your manicured world." Then I hung up. By noon, I was sitting in my garage workshop, laptop open, scrubbing through hours of security footage. Every frame was gold. There was Ellen, pointing with her clipboard, giving orders. There were the workers, clearly contractors, not city employees, dumping gravel, tearing the soil. And the best part? The timestamp overlay showing the date, time, and GPS coordinates from my camera's metadata. It was practically gift-wrapped evidence. Marianne brought me a sandwich and leaned over my shoulder. "You look like you're editing a crime documentary." "Oh, I am," I said, smirking. Episode 1, Suburbia's Most Wanted. We both laughed, that half-crazy laughter that comes when you realize you're in too deep to back down. The next step was the county records office. I drove down there that afternoon, camera stills in hand, to request a property line verification. The clerk, a bored-looking man named Randy, scanned my documents and frowned. "They dug here," he said, tracing the trench line on the map. "Yep. All the way around." "Sir, that's about 8 feet inside your property boundary. 8 feet? He nodded. They didn't even file a public notice for excavation. That's not just a violation, that's criminal mischief. I felt my jaw tighten. You willing to say that in writing? He nodded slowly. If you file an incident report, sure. So I did. Signed, stamped, and official. That evening, Ellen came knocking. Yes, actually knocking. When I opened the door, she was standing there with 2 other HOA board members, Richard Graves, the vice president, always in cargo shorts and socks with sandals, and Linda Morris, treasurer, notorious gossip. Ellen's smile was tight as piano wire. Mr. Carter, she began, we'd like to clear the air. There's been some misunderstanding about the drainage project. I leaned against the doorframe. Oh, really? Which part, the trench around my house or the $2,000 fine for something you caused? Linda stepped forward, clasping her binder like a shield. We've reviewed our notes, and it seems there might have been a miscommunication with the contractors. Miscommunication? I said. Ellen, I've got you on camera directing them. You pointed exactly where to dig. Richard's eyes flicked toward Ellen. Wait, you were here personally? She shot him a look that could melt lead. I was supervising. We all agreed it was necessary. Funny, I interrupted, because the county records office said no permit was filed. And they've already opened an investigation. That one landed. I could see the color drain from her face. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, she stammered. Oh, there is, I said, stepping forward. It's called criminal trespass. Ellen straightened, trying to recover her composure. Let's not make this ugly, Mr. Carter. The board would be willing to waive your fine if you agree not to. Not to what? I asked softly. Expose you? Silence. Marianne appeared in the doorway beside me, arms crossed. You people better start filling that trench back in before my husband decides to livestream this little scandal. Ellen blinked. Livestream? Yeah, I said, holding up my phone. Neighborhood page, local news, you'd be amazed how fast footage like this goes viral. HOA gone rogue, residents fight back. Has a nice ring to it. Linda muttered something about bad optics. Ellen forced another smile. We'll discuss it at our next board meeting. Do that, I said, and shut the door in her face. That night, I uploaded the footage. I didn't post it publicly, not yet. But I sent it to 3 places. The county inspector's office. A local news reporter I knew from a past neighborhood dispute. And my lawyer, Daniel Reese, a no-nonsense attorney with a taste for HOA takedowns. By the next morning, I had 3 replies waiting. The county wanted to schedule a site inspection. The reporter asked for an interview. And Daniel simply wrote, "You've got them, Carter. Don't say a word to them, I'll handle it." I almost felt sorry for Ellen. Almost. 2 days later, the inspection team rolled into Maple Hollow, clipboards, measuring tools, and county badges gleaming. They surveyed the trench, took soil samples, and made plenty of notes while the neighbors peeked through curtains. By the afternoon, everyone knew something was up. You could feel it in the air. The HOA board, once smug and untouchable, was suddenly silent. The weekly Facebook posts stopped. No more cheery reminders about lawn uniformity or paint tone compliance. Then came the best moment of all. Ellen, standing outside her SUV, trying to explain to the inspector why her board had ordered private excavation without a permit. I watched from my porch, camera in hand, as she gestured wildly, the inspector shaking his head, clearly unimpressed. Click. Snapshot taken. Marianne grinned beside me. You think she realizes she's on your camera again? Oh, she knows, I said. And this time, the whole county's watching. That evening, a cease and desist order was delivered to the HOA office. The county's ruling was clear. The trench was illegal. The HOA was liable for property damage. All excavation work was to stop immediately pending investigation. Ellen must have read that letter about 100 times, because by the next morning, the crew was back, this time, filling in the trench. No smiles, no clipboard waving, no fake pleasantries. Just silent, efficient work. I stood on my porch, sipping my coffee, and called out, "Hey Ellen, want me to send you the footage for your records?" She didn't even look up. That night, Marianne and I sat in the backyard under the string lights, the faint sound of crickets humming through the newly repaired soil. "You think it's over?" she asked. I smiled, eyes on the camera feed still recording the fence line. "Not yet. Tomorrow's the board meeting. That's when it gets fun." The night of the HOA meeting felt like the calm before a thunderstorm. Maple Hollow's community center was just a glorified recreation room attached to the clubhouse, fluorescent lights, folding chairs, and the faint smell of lemon-scented disinfectant. But tonight, it felt like an arena. Half the neighborhood showed up. Word had spread fast, the county had issued citations, the drainage project was under investigation, and Ellen Davenport's perfect reputation was cracking like porcelain. I sat in the back, hands folded, expression calm. Marianne was next to me, wearing that serene, satisfied smile that only comes from knowing your enemies are about to implode. Ellen stood at the front, tapping the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," she began, voice tight but steady. "Let's begin tonight's meeting with our usual announcements before." A voice from the audience cut her off. "Before you explain why you dug a trench around Carter's house without permission?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ellen's jaw twitched. "That matter is under review, and I'd appreciate it if we..." Another voice. "Is it true the county's investigating you?" Richard Graves, the vice president, shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Let's maintain order, please. We have procedures." I stood up slowly. The room fell quiet. "Actually," I said, "since the matter is under review, maybe we should review it properly." All eyes turned to me. Ellen's lips tightened. "Mr. Carter, this isn't the time." "Oh, I think it's exactly the time," I interrupted, walking toward the front with my laptop under my arm. I reached the podium, plugged it into the projector, and a large frozen image appeared on the wall behind her, the opening frame of my security footage. Timestamp, June 14, 7:46 a.m. Title, HOA Trench Incident, Maple Hollow. Gasps fluttered across the room like wind through dry leaves. Ellen stepped back. "What is this?" "Documentation," I said simply. "Every second of what your drainage project really looked like. Recorded by my cameras. In 4K. I hit play. On screen, there was Ellen herself pointing, giving orders, and saying clearly, "This is HOA business, no need for permission." The room erupted. People turned to each other, whispering, some outright laughing in disbelief. Ellen's face went pale. "That recording is out of context." I hit pause. "You sure about that?" "Because I've got 3 more angles if this one isn't flattering enough." Richard put his head in his hands. Linda, the treasurer, looked ready to cry. "Now," I continued, "before anyone accuses me of tampering, the county inspector verified all timestamps and coordinates. This footage was also submitted to the local news and my attorney." Ellen's voice cracked. You went to the press?" I smiled. "Not yet. But they're watching closely. They'll love what comes next." The screen switched to the second clip, the dump truck pouring gravel. Then the letter Ellen taped to my door, the $2,000 fine. Then, finally, her argument at my porch, where she offered to waive the fine if I stayed quiet. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Completely, suffocatingly silent. Then, an older man in the front row, Mr. Jennings, a retired mechanic, stood up and said loudly, "You trespassed, Ellen. You dug into his property. You lied to all of us." Someone else added, "You fined him for your own mistake." And then came the murmurs, growing louder, angrier. "Resign. Yeah, step down, Ellen. We trusted you." Ellen looked around, desperate. You don't understand. I was trying to prevent flooding. It was for the good of the neighborhood. I crossed my arms. The county found zero drainage issues. In fact, they fined you for unpermitted excavation. Want me to read the letter? Richard finally stood, clearing his throat. I think the board needs to issue a public apology. And a full reimbursement. Ellen spun toward him. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious, Richard said quietly. You lied to us too. Linda, shaking, added, I resign. Then she grabbed her purse and walked straight out of the room. Half the audience clapped. Ellen stood frozen, trembling slightly, eyes darting toward the door like a trapped animal. I leaned toward the mic. Ellen, I'm going to make this easy for you. You reimburse me for the property damage, retract every false violation, and step down as HOA president. Or tomorrow, every local outlet gets the full footage. She swallowed hard. You'd ruin your own community's reputation? I smiled thinly. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up. The tension broke as laughter and applause rippled through the crowd. Someone even whistled. For once, Ellen had no words. She gathered her papers with shaking hands, muttered something about ungrateful residents, and stormed out. The sound of that door slamming shut was the most satisfying thing I'd ever heard. By the next morning, an email went out to the entire neighborhood. Notice of resignation, HOA president. Effective immediately, Ellen Davenport has stepped down from her position. Interim president, Richard Graves. Property restoration for 211 Willow Creek, Carter residence, will be completed at HOA expense. I almost framed it. The following week, a crew arrived, a professional one this time, with city permits and paperwork. They refilled the trench properly, leveled the soil, and even installed new edging around my fence at no cost. Marianne watched them work from the porch, coffee in hand. You know, for someone who hates drama, you sure stir up a lot of it. I laughed. I didn't stir it. I just documented it. A few days later, I got a knock on the door. It was the local reporter, Diana Holt, from Channel 7 News. Mr. Carter, she said, we're running a segment on homeowners standing up to overreaching HOAs. Mind if we use your footage? Go ahead, I said. Maybe it'll save someone else the trouble. That night, the story aired under the headline. Caught in 4K, HOA president faces backlash after digging around homeowner's property. Ellen's face flashed on screen, clipboard, sunglasses, and that frown caught mid-command. The next morning, my inbox flooded with messages from nearby neighborhoods. People thanking me. Sharing their own horror stories. Asking for legal advice or camera recommendations. I just smiled and replied to each with 2 words, document everything. Weeks later, the grass finally grew back. The scars of the trench were gone, replaced by soft green lines. Real peace returned to Maple Hollow. Every morning, I'd sit on my porch, sip my coffee, and glance at the quiet street. No more HOA patrols, no more surprise notices. Just calm. Then one afternoon, as the sun dipped low, I noticed Ellen's house, for sale sign out front, moving truck in the driveway. She caught sight of me watching and froze. For a moment, we just stared at each other, no words, no glares. Just the silence of 2 people who both knew how this war ended. I raised my coffee mug slightly, like a toast. She didn't wave back. Just climbed into her car and drove off. As her taillights disappeared down the street, Marianne stepped beside me. So that's it, she asked. Yep, I said. Trench filled. Karma delivered. She smirked. You going to take down the cameras now? I looked up at the little red lights still blinking on the corners of the roof. Nah, I said. They've got a good view. That night, I uploaded one last clip, a quiet time-lapse of the yard's restoration. I titled it, Integrity Project, Completed. The comments came pouring in. Some laughed, some cheered, some said it gave them courage to stand up to their own neighborhood tyrants. And as I sat there reading, the words on the screen reflected the truth perfectly, that sometimes, justice doesn't come from shouting, or fighting, or lawyers. Sometimes, it comes from simply hitting record.